Hi all, I don't know what happened in that last, the end of that last video, so let's just go on these functions really quick. So, functions of simple epithelium, this one-layered epithelial, it's absorption, filtration, and then secretion. Stratified, 2 or more layers, it's functioning and protection. And then this pseudostratified, the best way to say it is each cell is connected to the basal layer, the basement membrane. We'll get into that basement membrane in a sec. But these are found in areas with little movement. And examples like the respiratory tract. So let's look at these cells. So this is simple, stratified, and then I was finishing drawing pseudostratified, so let me finish that picture. Okay, so here's our different simple stratified and pseudostratified epithelium. So the thing that you want to look at is like why, instead of just knowing the what of this function of simple is absorption, filtration, secretion, but why? Why is that better than stratified? Well, let's just think of, for example, oxygen diffusing in the lungs, okay? So in the lungs, in your alveoli, you don't have to know that term until next semester, but there you have these little molecules of oxygen that are going to cross from your lungs into your bloodstream, okay? So if I draw a blood vessel, and I'm going to draw the blood vessel in blue, just to differentiate from this long, simple squamous right there. Alright, so this is my blood vessel, this is blood flowing through it. This layer is also simple, okay, so it's also one cell layer thick. Why is that important? So these molecules like oxygen have to diffuse across plasma membranes in the lungs to get into the bloodstream. What makes more sense? The oxygen molecule going through 4 layers of cells, or the oxygen molecule going through 1 layer of cell? So the whole point of this absorption and filtration, same thing with filtration. Let's say we're filtering something out of the blood, and now this simple layer is now the kidney, and this is still your blood vessel. So now I have waste, like nitrogenous waste, that are coming out and being filtered through 1 layer, and then it goes through 1 layer. And that's a lot more beneficial. It takes time and energy to go across these membranes. So the most efficient thing, especially like if you need to breathe and you need oxygen, the quickest thing is to get it across 1 layer. So this absorption and filtration, it's only going across 1 layer, and that makes it efficient for its function. Stratified. This functions in protection. So where might we see this? The outside of your skin is stratified squamous epithelium. So if you can look at your arm right now, unless you've put lotion on today, you can literally rub your arm and you should be able to see. If you don't have super dry skin, you might not see flakes coming off, but if you rub your skin hard enough, you'll see some discoloration and some, not chafing, but if you just go to a dry part on your body, rub it, and you'll see that skin will flake off. You've seen people have skin flake off before, I'm sure. So this stratified layer is functioning in protection, because if we only had 1 layer, let's do another picture. So this is now my skin, and it's made of 1 layer. Well, let's say that I'm taking a walk through the woods, and I hit a branch, and that branch cuts through that layer. If this was only 1 layer, then I have this connective tissue down here, and muscles down here, and nerves down here, that could all be damaged if this branch went and cut through all that. So instead of having 1 simple layer for protection works best when you have stratified layers. So if this branch did for some reason come and poke me, it would have to get through this, let's see, what is this now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would have to get through 5 layers instead of 1 layer. So that's how stratified functions in protection, because since it's stratified, there's multiple layers to protect whatever the underlying tissue are. Alright, so we've done simple and stratified. Pseudostratified, so how do you know this is pseudostratified? What we're trying to show here is, watch what I highlight in black. You can see that there's connection with this bottom, what we're calling the basement membrane, for every single one of these cells. So even though this nuclei and this nuclei look like they're stacked on top of each other, they're actually 2 different cells, both with their basal surface touching this basement membrane. So that's pseudostratified. So remember, let's go back, let's look one more time. Simple epithelium, 1 layer, absorption and filtration. We saw that over here with this oxygen diffusing across the lungs and then nitrogenous waste diffusing from the kidneys. That's just 2 examples. Next, we look at stratified, functions and protection. How do we know it functions in protection? Because if we only had a simple layer and that tree branch cut through me, then I could hit the nerves and the connective tissue and the muscle all down there. So that's why we have stratified. Pseudostratified, we'll talk about it more throughout the semester. We'll see this in the lungs, and that's the best example I have right now. But if we think of something like pseudostratified, ciliated, columnar epithelium, then we can think about how why would they be in the respiratory tract? Well, this pseudostratified, ciliated columnar epithelium has these cilia that we talked about, those extensions that can wisp away and trap foreign objects and whisk them towards the lungs so that you cough and then don't let any pathogens in the body. So that's a function of pseudostratified in the body, in the lungs. Okay, now let's do it based on shape. Okay, so here's our classifications based on shape. So this first one we'll do is squamous. Squamous means flat. The way I like to think of this, I think squamous kind of looks like the word squish. So I think of these as like squished, flattened cells. This is a cuboidal cell. So what is that? Cuboidal means that it's the same height as it is width. And here's a nucleus in there. And then columnar means that they are longer than they are wider. Now, I always, whenever I'm drawing cells, I'll do like a line like this, just so I can remember. And I'll remember that this line is probably this simple, and then I'll draw a cube. Because cuboidal cells, and the main cuboidal cell we talk about are goblet cells, these mucus-producing cells. These are almost always associated with columnar epithelium. So get in your head columnar epithelium, or if you see cuboidal, there's probably columnar associated with it. Let's see. So cuboidal, these are going to be involved in secretion. We just said those goblet cells, which we'll get into when we talk about glands, these mucus-producing cells. So columnar, these are going to be high in digestive and respiratory tracts. So let's think about this for a second. Respiratory tract, you know, if you've ever had a really bad cough, you're coughing up mucus, right? So if we look in our respiratory tract, here's a line, and let's say I have a cuboidal cell and I have a columnar cell. So this columnar, now we can kind of mix these things with shape and layers. Okay, so let's do PCCE, which is pseudostratified, so that's based on layers, ciliated, columnar, based on shape, epithelium. So now if I draw some cilia, okay, so I have the ciliated columnar epithelium, and then I have this cuboidal cell. This cuboidal cell in the respiratory tract is secreting mucus, and then this mucus can go help trap things in these cilia, and then these cilia can wisp things more towards your throat so that you can cough them out. So we see this combination of function here, right? We have this ciliated columnar epithelium helping to wisp away pathogens, and then we have these cuboidal cells secreting this mucus to help trap pathogens. Or, if we go to the digestive tract, this is my columnar epithelium, and this isn't going to be ciliated, so this is just going to be columnar, and this is going to function in absorption. So let's say, let me do another picture. We'll say this is my digestive tract and this is food. And the walls of this digestive tract are made of simple, because remember, simple is one layer. Okay, one layer is going to act in that absorption and filtration. But now we're going to be absorbing this food, so now we have simple columnar epithelium. So in the lungs, we had that simple squamous, which was helping that oxygen move across. Now we have simple columnar. And what this is going to do is, since this food is actually really nutrients, right? Let me do nutrients as just a bunch of dots. If I have all these nutrients around in my digestive tract, and they have to get into this blood vessel over here past the wall of the digestive tract, so they need to go from in here across there. So remember, we want simple because we only want one layer. It's easier to move nutrients through one layer of cells than it is multiple stratified layers. And we want this columnar because if my nutrient was here, then it could go in there. If my nutrient was here, then it could enter the cell this way and then go in there. So what these columnar epithelium are doing are helping increase surface area for this absorption. Okay, so we've done squamous, flat. There's a bunch of different functions for squamous. Cuboidal, same length and width. Again, these are really the ones we talk about are goblet cells, these mucus-producing unicellular glands. And then columnar, greater than length and width. And the two places that we said we're finding them in high numbers are the respiratory tract with this PCCE, and then the digestive tract, which is this layer of simple columnar epithelium. This last one is called transitional. So these have a dome-shaped surface. So here's my dome. And what these are found in lining hollow storage cavities. So places like the stomach where you can put a bunch of food in and it can change size. Or the bladder where you can input a bunch of urine and change size. Now, if you remember, nothing in the body happens without a signal. So the signal to, one of the signals for the stomach to keep up, like moving it from the stomach to further in the digestive tract, one of those signals is stretch. Okay, so stretch. This activates the stomach and the bladder. Now the thing is if we're putting a bunch of urine in all the time because we're constantly drinking water and stuff, if you're putting that in your bladder and it stretches, then you're going to have to urinate. But it wouldn't be very efficient if every time we put urine into our bladder, we had to urinate. So to do that, we have this way of flattening these transitional epithelium cells. And what that does is it allows you to increase volume. So let's say this is my stomach. Here's my stomach with no food in it. If I have all these transitional cells, like this, lining it, okay, and now all of these flatten out. So this length really becomes, this becomes like this. This one flattens out like this. Then you're going to have a bigger storage sac. But you haven't stretched this thing at all. Instead, these have just flattened, and that's different than stretching. Stretching would mean that this cell has reached its maximal boundaries of the space it's taking up, and then as you add more urine, then it might bend or something. That's stretching. But this flattening out isn't stretching. That's why we're calling it transitioning. So we're transitioning from this dome-shaped to the flat shape, and we see these in the stomach and the bladder. And what these are hollow storage cavities, and we want to be able to store things without having to digest immediately or without having to pee immediately. So these transitional cells allow us to increase the volume of these storage containers without stretching the container. Eventually you're going to have enough food or enough urine in the stomach or in the bladder, and that will cause you to either keep digesting or pee. Alright, nice. Let's do the general functions of epithelial tissue. We've already talked about a bunch of these, but then we'll see, we'll go back through the cells and see that we've actually hit some of these. So general functions of epithelial. Alright, so let's go through these general functions of epithelial tissue. So if you remember, one of those life processes that we had from the first unit was we had this limiting boundary, right? So the epithelial tissue, your epidermis, that top layer of your skin, that's made of epithelial tissue. So epithelial tissue for a human is going to act as a limiting boundary, okay? If you remember actually I'll draw some pictures in a minute. So just think limiting boundary. Let me do a different color. So it's limiting boundary. Okay, now this isn't, actually let me come back to that. Okay, so we've already seen protection, right? We saw on the outside of your skin, we wanted those multiple layers. Let's see if we can go back and start finding some pictures. So this was our protection thing. We didn't want our tree branch hitting one layer. We wanted to go through multiple layers to protect this underlying tissue. So we've already seen protection. Absorption, we saw that over here with this simple columnar epithelium with these food and nutrients going through that one layer of columnar epithelium. And then filtration, we saw that with the kidneys back here. So we used this as both a lung and a kidney example. So we had exchange of oxygen going across from the lungs to the blood vessel, and then we changed this to the kidneys, and we said this was like a nitrogenous waste being filtered out. So that's our filtration. Excretion, you excrete waste through like the cell. So you get all your. Let me draw a picture. I'm gonna draw a human real quick. I think this will help. Get ready for another great Liam McGill picture. All right, so. We know that we excrete through the anus, right? And we take in food through the mouth. So there's this whole canal, which is your digestive system. We'll talk about that next semester. But what I want you to see, and let me do that in a different color. What I want you to see here is everything inside this tube is technically outside of your body. And I know that's a really trippy concept to try to wrap your head around, but just look at this. If this is my epithelial limiting boundary here, then we have all this different stuff, organs, blah, 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 blah. And then we have this next layer. So this next layer is this epithelial layer of the digestive system. And everything in this tract is technically outside of your body. So, you have all this stuff, and if you need to excrete it and it can't be excreted through your urine, then you excrete it through your digestive system. So this epithelial is also functioning in excretion because you're going to take all these wastes from here and you'll put them into your digestive tract and then poop them out if they can't be filtered out through the kidneys. So let's go back and just look at these really quick. Establishes limiting boundary, we've seen that. Okay, check. There's our limiting boundary of epithelial tissue. Protection, we've seen that with this multiple layers of stratified epithelium tissue. Boom, done. Absorption, we already talked about that in the digestive system, so we won't do that one again. Filtration, we already talked about with the kidneys. Excretion, I just showed you this. You need to excrete waste that are building up in your cells, and if they can't be filtered out through the kidneys, you'll put them at the end of your digestive tract and poop them out. Secretion, we already talked about this goblet cells, those unicellular glands secreting mucus. And then this last one, sensory reception. So there's specialized epithelial cells within your skin that like allow you to feel when someone's touching your arms or something like that. So we'll get into that a little bit more once we get to the integumentary system. But that's a sensory. So again, some cells in epithelial tissue are modified to have this sensory reception function, and then they're connected to the nervous system. Alright, that looks like a good place to stop, and then we'll move into this basement membrane mumbo-jumbo.